When you see the way people live, you just keep wondering, do we all understand life the same way? I really used to wonder if we have the same understanding of life. See, life is life. No matter our individual differences, there is a common understanding that we should have about life. If we must live life to the fullest. But as we talk about understanding life, I really want us to look at finding meaning in life with or without God. You know, a lot of people today do a lot of trying to understand life and live life and make meaning, but without God. But again, there's a good number that do. But you see, understanding life and living life with or without God, with or without eternity in perspective, has a great effect in people's life. The only time men can make real meaning in life is when they define it with God and eternity. As I reason and as we think together in trying to understand life, I will want us to look at something written down from somebody that had had a share of life and had experienced the good, the bad, and the ugly, and so had penned down his own candid advice as to how to understand and to live life on this side of eternity. And this person is Solomon, the great king of Israel and Judah. I want us to look at his words as recorded in Ecclesiastes chapter 12. Verse 1 and 2 read thus: Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come, and the years approach when you will say, I find no pleasure in them. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars grow dark and the clouds return after the rain. Now, if you come with me to verse 13, it reads again, Now all had been heard. Hear the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandment, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will one day bring every deed into judgment, including the things done in hiding, whether they be good or bad. You see, my little comment is that Solomon is telling us that life is in stages. And he's saying, you know what? Probably one of the sweetest part of life is when one is young. That is when life is at its prime. But that is when the temptation to live without God and eternity is strong. But he is saying, remember God in the days of your youth. Because definitely, if life tarries, if life endures, you will grow old when it will be days of trouble and when you will find no pleasure in life itself. Because the sun and the light and the moon and the stars have become dark and the cloud have returned to the rain. My brothers and sisters, I want you to Sit down, reminisce, think, and reflect the way you're living your life. What understanding of life informs your actions? Now, if you look at having said a lot about understanding life and ideal life and the reality of life, he got to verse 13. He says, all had been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandment, for this is the whole duty. Hello? Did you get what that is saying? That as a human being created by God, not an act of evolution, you owe this God a duty. And he said, the whole of the duty you owe God can be summed up in this: fear God and keep his commandment. This is all in summary. Now, why is he saying fear God and keep his commandment? He didn't leave us without a notion. He went further to say, for this same God will bring everything. You know, sometimes when you see the way we are living our lives, you tend to want to ask, does this man knows that one day he will account for this life? You see, if you go back to Genesis, you will agree with me that our life is not our life, it's God's life that he breathed into the man he made from the dust. Our life is God's life, and so it will return to God. But while it is in this body on this side of eternity, everything that it did, it will account for, including the hidden and the open. To really understand life, we need to see it from the point of eternity. When you understand that you are an eternal being, you came from an infinite God, and that when life is done on this side of eternity, when we cross over, we don't cease to live, we don't cease to be alive. That understanding will go a long way in helping us to live better on this side. Eternity makes a whole lot of difference in the definition and understanding of life because it helps us to see reality. When you remove eternity and God, you tend to live in fantasy. And I hope and I pray that as you think along with me, as we reflect, you put in God and eternity into perspective so that you can have a better understanding of life. There are foundational questions that we need to be asking often to help us remain in track so we live with a proper understanding, we become well informed, and we live based on a proper information about who we really are and what life is all about. These important questions that I used to tag $1,000,000 questions are simply as follows. You used to ask yourself, who am I? Who really am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? Where will I be after death? What happens to me? What will happen to me after this life? Answers to this question have a serious implication in your life. For an individual to be able to live well, you need to be able to answer these questions in the light of God and eternity. Misunderstanding of life by many today have led them to relegating real virtues of life for selfish and greedy pursuits. When you don't know who you are, where you came from, where you're going to, you think life just evolved and life is just now and here, and after here, life ceases to be. That is the perspective of our 21st century people who believe they just evolve and there's no creator. They are a product of evolution, so they are not responsible to any creator. That's a foolish thing to think about. That's very, very foolish. How can you look at human being with his sophisticated makeup and conclude he just evolved? Now, it is this type of understanding that makes people to live selfish and greedy lives. All of their endeavors is the pursuit of the mundane. It takes a proper understanding of life to value virtues like morality, hard work, and contentment. In fact, these virtues are considered virtues of weaklings today. And let me tell you, these are virtues of real men, people that understand life. You know what? Today, people, instead of these good virtues, choose greed, selfishness, and immorality. And it is an odd world where people that do the right thing are ashamed of themselves, while people that do the wrong thing are being celebrated. There is a serious flawed view of life today. And this flawed view had succeeded in destroying true love and replacing it with jealousy, envy, and hatred. Understanding life. When people understand life well, their value system is ordered in the following way. But the flawed understanding today often put the order in the reverse. The proper order of preference of value system is God, people, God's word, systems, processes, product, then money. It's important I repeat this. The proper value system that should be the driving force for a normal human being is God first, people, His words, systems, processes, product, then money. But you will agree with me that in our world today, this last in the item had become the first. Money seemed to be everything. You know what? People only get to realize that money is just shadows when they have spent their quality life chasing money. Instead of God, people, His word, system, and process, product before money, they either turn it in the reverse or they alter it in a cross or zigzag way. I trust God we will look at this topic again, but at a little higher level. When we get to that point, if God buys us time, we would explain a little further. But as I try to round up for now, I want to say to you, it is high time that we begin to see leaders from all spheres of life have a proper preference or value system in order to have a good world. We need to see people in all spheres of life influence, I mean the seven spheres of life influence, begin to value God, people, His words, systems, process, product, and money, and not money first. Until we begin to have this type of value system, our society will hardly get better. We need to work hard. Probably that is what I am doing now, to begin to educate or re educate ourselves. There is the need to relearn some things and begin to unlearn something, sorry, so as to be able to relearn the proper thing. Until we educate our people to really understand life and live it in the life of this understanding, having God and eternity in perspective, we would not fulfill destiny in God. People might be successful as they think, but so long as it is not in line with divine destiny, it is not success as far as God is concerned. So I pray that God help us to understand life well, and that as we try to understand life, we will always make sure that God is at the middle and that eternity is put into perspective. Until we meet next time, I want to say Shalom. I wish you God's grace, and I wish you a successful and a prosperous life and a fulfillment of destiny with God. Shalom Luka.